Okay.
Awesome. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Chiropractic Compass podcast. This is brought to you by the legendary Chiropractor online community. And we are here with our lovely, lovely guest, Dr. Krysti Wick. Dr. Krysti is a family pediatric wellness chiropractor. She is absolutely crushing it and has been crushing it for many years. I actually met her way back when at Life, probably about a year or so ago, a little bit over that, but we met and I've been trying to get her on season 1, got her on season 2 finally, and we're here, we're doing it. And so she has a lot of content, a lot of value to offer students, doctors, anyone looking to associate, start their own practice, whatnot. She's the gal to go to. So with that being said, Doc, I would love to give you the floor. Just introduce yourself, where you come from, how you found chiropractic or how chiropractic found you, and then just share some of your accolades with us.
Yeah, awesome. I'd love to. So first and foremost, I just have to say congrats, Johnny, on what you're doing. Like, I love seeing students that are this passionate, this engaged, and I'm going to start this off and be completely honest and say, I wish that I had like a 10th of your drive and energy when I was a chiropractic student, because I definitely did not. I was worried about boards and the whole academic situation. So
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So as he said, I am Dr. Krysti Wick. I practice in West Bend, Wisconsin, small little place that nobody has heard of. That's okay. I'm a little bit north of Milwaukee. I have been a chiropractor for 11 years. And chiropractic definitely did find me, as you mentioned. So when I was 12 years old, I fell out of the top floor of a barn. And I had a compression fracture of L1 subsequently. And after many months of just failed medical intervention, my parents brought me to see a chiropractor. And that chiropractor was just this young, vibrant, fantastic woman who just really showed me what was possible with how the body worked. I was always kind of a science nerd. And so I loved it. And she was very connected with me. I ended up working for her in high school and after high school. And the rest is kind of history. So I opened my practice fresh out of school, having zero idea what I was doing. And we're going to get into this in a little bit, but didn't really have mentors and didn't choose to go find some. So the first few years of practice were a big struggle for me. I had a lot of challenges, and I ended up really reverting to some of the things that I said I never would do, like pain-based marketing and really short care plans and lots of insurance dependence, because I just didn't know how to connect what was in my brain with my mouth and then telling, everyone about the message and really having them understand what was possible. So after a few years of just really failing, I found some fantastic mentors that really just transformed my life, gave me tons of amazing resources. And so I changed my practice really quickly after that. And so for the last about 6.5 years, things have grown crazy rapidly year after year. I now have a multi-doc practice. So there's 3 of us female practitioners in the office, all female team. So there's lots of estrogen around here. But I'm really passionate about leading women and, helping them find their voice. So we really enjoy practicing together and having that team-based approach in our family practice in Wisconsin. So that's the gist of it.
I love it. I love it, Doc. You're full of energy. You're full of charisma. I love your passion. And it's women. I love talking to female chiropractors that have, the full female team and everything about that, because it goes to show female chiropractors are taking over chiropractic. Like, let's just be honest here. It's awesome to see, but it's really cool that, I can bring people onto the show that are female leaders that can, be a resource for other female chiropractors who are going through school, who might be struggling a little bit, male or female, whatever. I mean, everyone struggles. And I want to bring you guys on the show to show other docs and other students that, these are people that you can reach out to at any time with anything. I mean, you guys are all amazing chiropractors and amazing people. So without further ado, I want to hop right into content, right into the topics, and I'm going to bullet list them at first, and then we'll go and break down each one as much as we possibly can. And if we, don't get to all of them, that's okay. That's okay. So number one, Dr. Krysti wants to talk about mentorship and the wicked transition of student to doctor and how it doesn't necessarily have to be a wicked transition. Practicing before you're even in practice, the importance of mindset. We talk about that a lot on this podcast. And I think if anyone has watched more than one episode of this podcast, you know that your thoughts control most of your actions. So business knowledge and investing and improving your leadership expertise, because that is solidly very, very critical to your future and to your community's future as well. So let's start with number one, mentorship. Doc, let's hop right into that. What are your thoughts on mentorship? How do you go about finding a good person for you?
Yeah, I love that you just kind of teed it up with, there's so many of us out there that are more than willing to help. And I can tell all of you that are students watching, when I was in chiropractic school, social media wasn't a thing. Like, we literally had like the old school, like the Palm Pilot situation, like smartphones weren't I'm dating myself, but it's true. And so now with the world of social media, there's just so many resources out there for you to get your hands on, just like this, like what we're talking on right now. And I really just first and foremost want to implore you to not be shy. Like, just be that student that is willing to ask for help. And I can tell you, just as I started this, as a seasoned doc, this is something that really impresses us. And it's something that I think any doctor that has been established for a long period of time is super honored to help a student, because we are so clear in knowing that the future is with you guys. And if we don't continue to make sure that we are really highlighting some of the dead ends that maybe we ran into so that you don't run into them yourself, then chiropractic is going to continue to struggle, and it's not going to get to a place where we know it can go. So I think the first thing with mentorship is just don't be afraid to reach out. I know I've spoken with so many students over the years, and even doctors as well, that will tell me like, well, you're just so busy and I don't want to bother you. And obviously I'm not saying go, inundate people with messages. But I'm saying if you have a really intelligent question or something high level that's going to be pivotal in your journey and what you're deciding to do after school, and even once you're out and potentially running into a struggle, don't be afraid to reach out to those people that you see on your social media feed or you see on stage at a conference. And really just in general, make sure that you're consuming some of that content. So you're going to conferences, you're listening to things like this. Obviously, I'm preaching to the choir a little bit if you're listening to this right now. But I think the biggest thing, especially with females, I'm going to talk to female students especially, I think this is amongst everyone, but I hear this a lot with women, that we don't like to burden other people with what's going on with us. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes we make as you're transitioning from student to doctordom, is you're not investing in that mentorship. And I was totally that person. So I just want to be vulnerable and say, as I already mentioned just briefly, I was that person that was like, I don't want to be weak. Like, I can figure this out myself. That's the whole point of going to school. I invested all this money in my education and I can figure this out. And, I had worked in another practice. So I had been a CA before. And so I had seen a lot of things, but I hadn't seen enough. I just hadn't seen enough. And I don't think you can ever see enough, to be honest. Like, there's still times now where I love going and visiting some of my friends that practice in other areas and seeing their practice and their flow and whatnot, because you're always going to pick up more. You're always going to see a different perspective and start to understand things through a new lens. And so as a student, you really need to make sure that you're making that mentorship and consuming content a regular part of your routine when you're in school, so that it's a habit that you've already established. So once you're out, it's normal for you. It's something that you are consistently making connections, and you're consistently reaching out to people that you admire and respect to get some insight. And then, of course, hopefully, eventually you're finding really kind of a chiropractic home. So whether that be a one-on-one coach or a community, or, a lot of people practice management group, whatever it is, right? But find a tribe of like-minded people that you can use as a resource, but also then you get to eventually become, mutual resource. And you hear this all the time in chiropractic, right? You want to develop yourself so that you're getting a hand up, but you're also putting a hand down and pulling someone up behind you. And I think that's just so important. So just don't get locked in that cycle of, you don't want to appear weak, you don't want to ask for help because you don't want to bother people, whatever it is. You are literally just delaying your own success. and you're delaying the inevitable potential improvement that could happen. And I just don't want to see any of you as students especially waste time, because I wasted a lot of years being too proud and being, having my little superwoman cape on, thinking that I could do it all. And honestly, it was just silly. And so that was the biggest lesson that I had to learn for myself. But I definitely want all of you to make sure that you aren't stuck in that. So
yeah, for sure. What a great answer. I absolutely love everything that you said. Mentorship is so important. It's so critical to the student and that transition, which we're going to hop into next in the upcoming topic. But I took down some notes while you were talking. You got to reach out. You absolutely have to reach out to people. I mean, I reached out to you, I think twice, 3 times. And before we finally got connected and worked out a time that worked, but I was like, persistence wins. I was like, that's my motto behind this podcast. It's like persistence always wins. And it's true. And wins is like kind of a mean term, I guess, but you got to be consistent, persistent, whatever term you want to use. But I also wrote down that experience and wisdom from others is priceless. It wasn't priceless to them because it probably cost them a couple of dollars during that time. But to you and their experience and their wisdom is absolutely priceless, because you can pick their brains about certain things that, like, hey, Dr. Krysti, this patient came in, had this, I'm not sure where to go, right? Like, what do I do? Or I have this financial issue. What happens now, right? What happens with my practice? What happens with my family? Like all this stuff. And you'll be like, well, back in the day, I had that same issue. Here's what I did to get out of it. And here I am successful. And you're like, whoa. And then talk about time, right? Talk about time. You save a bunch of time by doing that and reaching out. And it's incredible what happens when you actually reach out. Do you have any further things to say on mentorship?
I mean, I think the only thing, just now that you redirect a little bit, just make sure that you're, you all need to flex that muscle of figuring stuff out too, right? So I'm not saying don't be someone that is consistently peppering because you just aren't looking inward, right? And I think that's an important thing to note is exhaust your resources first, but then yes, don't be afraid to reach out. There is kind of a happy medium where, because if you don't start trying to use the knowledge that's in there, then you'll never get to a point where you trust your own answers. And that's another really common thing that I see, where people think they need to consistently just consume more, but they're not using the things that are already up here. So it's a good happy medium, but yeah, don't waste time trying to reinvent the wheel when there's so many people that have wheels spinning on a regular.
There are a lot of wheels out there. I love it. So let's transition right into practicing before you practice. So how can people start getting this idea of not only reaching out? Now we got the mentor, right? How do we start implementing some of this now in school before becoming that doctor?
Right. So when I had to type this out, I was like, "Ooh, I really like that." But then I just heard you say it back, and I was like, "I'm not telling you to do anything illegal, everybody. So please don't do that." What I'm talking about is practicing your communication before you are in practice. So obviously all of you are practicing your adjusting in student clinic and, all of those types of things. And that's something that I see most students focusing on, which is great. Of course, you need to be a fantastic adjuster. You need to learn how to listen to your body in context of listening to their body and whatnot. There's so many pieces there that you need to dive into. But what I still see a lot of students lacking is practicing the communication piece. And this is one of those things where, again, it's the whole consuming content but not using it quite yet. You have to start using some of the communication resources that you're getting ASAP. You have to start practicing your dialogue and your analogies and your context, so that once you do get to a point where, you're in a fantastic associate position or you're starting your own practice, you will only ever be as successful as how well you can communicate. And obviously all of you have heard that, I'm sure, a million different ways, times, references. But I can tell you with complete certainty that I am not as successful as I am because I'm a fantastic, the best adjuster on the planet. I'm not like a technique master. That's definitely, I would say, low on the reasons why I am where I am. I would say in my top 2 for sure, is communication and connection. I had to really learn what I stand for, what is my why with chiropractic? What does my heart look like when I'm presenting it in a very professional way as a doctor? And how do I continue to connect all those pieces for instance, a mom that's sitting across from me? How do I make sure that she knows that this is more than just a job to me? And that's where the communication piece is really vital for all of you as students to practice. So the tangible action step for you guys is you have to work it into your schedule. And in the beginning, that literally might just look like every single time you're driving from your apartment to campus, you are talking to yourself and giving yourself your little, I like to call it a passion pitch instead of an elevator pitch, because let's be honest, how often are you guys stuck in an elevator? Like that doesn't anymore. So are you practicing your passion pitch? And do you have a legitimate 60 to 90-second version of that you know you could go and teach a kindergartner and they would understand what chiropractic is? If you don't, then that's where you have to start. And so, work it into a habit, like I mentioned, while you're driving or, while you're getting ready in the morning, you're talking to yourself in the mirror, or, literally you are walking around with, music in here and you're talking to yourself as you're taking a walk. Like, those are all totally potentially uncomfortable examples for all of you, but this is what's required to get yourself to a point where you can really experience the level of success that you're capable of. So that's the first aspect. And then once you have that down, you have to start looking for opportunities to share in front of other people. So, for those of you that are involved in like talk the tech type conversations, those things are so important. And I would really encourage you to push outside of your comfort zone now while you're in school to participate in those types of things, because you're never going to be able to get the feedback like you have right now, because you are surrounded with people that are going to be able to give you fantastic advice and insight and different perspectives. And once you get out into practice, it's a lot harder to go find those environments. It requires you going and traveling or, investing in other things as far as like, online groups or whatnot. So just make sure that you're using as many opportunities as you can. And I don't know, every school probably is different, but reach out to local groups. Like, there might be potential for you to go to a local MOPS group with your clinician from your clinic and talk to them about chiropractic. Yeah. If you have the guts to do something like that in school, I can guarantee you hands down that you will be successful much quicker than any of your peers, because you're willing to be uncomfortable now when you have the most support and you have the most guidance, and you're going to rock it forward and not waste all of that time. So you have to practice the communication piece, because that truly is, I'm going to like hands down, I would say the communication piece and the team piece, team business, are really the two things that are the most difficult to master, because once you get great at adjusting and all the clinical side of things, those are the things that you have to focus on. So
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And when it comes to, we talk about communication a lot. I mean, in chiropractic school, everyone, all the speakers come and they're like, you gotta learn how to talk. You gotta learn how to talk. But I think it's important to understand where you're coming from, right? You were like, I wrote down kind of for people who wear their heart on their sleeve kind of people, right? It's like, it's a totally different way of communicating what is going on in the body, what is happening chiropractically with that patient or with that person. And it can be, you have to find your style, right? You got to find like, how are you going to communicate that message? Because it's not going to be the same as the person down the road. And that might be the difference maker in why they're in your office and not in their office, right?
That's going to be the difference maker. I think that's the biggest thing. So, so many of you are probably too concerned on the words themselves instead of the actual feeling behind them. And you're not spending time figuring out, yes, I'm sure a lot of people listening are like, figure out my style. What does that mean? But this is where you have to invest in resources. So, like one tangible example for all of you, one of my favorite resources is Donald Miller, the Story Brand. So if you guys don't listen to his podcast, it's a fantastic one for you to listen to. But he talks about true leaders communicating with both authority and empathy. And I think when you're in chiropractic school and you all are learning about communication, you're so stuck on thinking about the authority piece. Like, are people going to believe you? Are they going to understand your version of what subluxation is? And that is important. But if you don't start practicing the empathy side, they'll never buy. Like, they will never convert into a patient, because everything you said from an analytical standpoint might make sense, the science piece, but if they don't feel your passion, if they don't understand your why, and if they don't really see that you care tremendously about their family, honestly, it doesn't matter a whole lot. So you all need to focus on how can you develop both pieces of that? And most humans are heavy on the authority side, lack empathy, or vice versa. Like, it's very rare to find someone that's naturally good at both. So if you know that you are heavy on empathy, like people run you over on a regular basis, then you have to practice the authority and vice versa. So
right. Yeah, that's a really good point. I like how you said that, because you do hear style, like find your style. Yeah, I like how you broke that down. You got to figure out which lane you're in and then run with it. I like that a lot, Dr. Krysti. That was awesome. So now that we have a mentor, we have our mentorship, we have our guidance, and we've been practicing our communication and collaboration and really getting out of our comfort zone. Now let's go into, how do we take care of ourselves mentally, right? How do we take care of ourselves mentally so that we can prepare ourselves best for our patients?
Yeah. So I'm glad to hear you say that you've been focusing a ton on mindset on the podcast. So I'll be honest and say, unfortunately, I haven't listened to any yet, but I'm so glad to hear that, because I think a lot of people can feel a little bit like the mindset and the mentality stuff is a little bit foo-foo, or, in the business world, they call it woo-woo, like there's the woo-woo stuff. But I can tell you from my own personal experience, it was the thing that was preventing me from succeeding. And as soon as I had fantastic mentors in my life that started shining lights on the things that I wasn't really looking at, everything started to change as I did that work. So I think the biggest thing, again, I just want to encourage all of you to start asking yourself what does make you feel uncomfortable. So if some of the things we already talked about, you're like, ugh, like, would I ever call up a MOPS group and take my clinician and go talk to them? Like, oh, I would look dumb. I wouldn't know what to say. You have to start dissecting some of those feelings now and figuring out where they come from, so that, again, once you get into these uncomfortable situations in practice, which, by the way, they happen on a daily basis. There's still plenty of things now that happen that I'm like, oh, I don't really want to deal with that, or I'm not excited about that. But this is where, if you have done the hard work of figuring out, like, what are you truly fearful of and why, and where does that come from? And, how are you going to really get good at being comfortable being the person swimming upstream? Because I'm going to tell you, being a chiropractor is swimming upstream every single day of your life for all of eternity. Yeah. So you all have to figure out a way, and I want to say armor up, but that's not right. Like, you don't want to armor up, but you want to become a wholehearted version of yourself that really understands your why and the pieces in your life that have really impacted you, so that when you do have those moments that are uncomfortable and icky, and you feel like you're swimming upstream really hard and you're super exhausted, you can go back to that solid foundation that you laid and you can move forward. So again, from a tangible perspective, because I know that's really, at any point, student or not, I think that's the most important, is what can you do tangibly? So I think sit down and make a list as a student of what are the things right now, when you think about being in practice, what are the things that make you feel most uncomfortable and why? And I also love this 7 layers of why exercise. It's so many different people I think this came from. I happened to see it on a Dean Graziosi video, but I think it came from various different places. But just want to make sure this isn't my thing, but this is a thing I use often with my coaching clients and with myself. So let's say you're uncomfortable speaking in front of a crowd. You have to ask yourself why. And then to that question, ask yourself why again. And so you're going to ask yourself why 7 times until you get to the root of, like, this is actually what it is. And you all will be shocked at, like, what comes out. Yeah. And I'm going to give you a tangible example. So yesterday, one of my coaching clients sent me an email, and she said, whenever I see other chiropractors in my area that have a practice similar to mine, that have an event similar to what I would do or whatnot, I always have these, like, just these feelings, right? Like, not necessarily even jealousy, but just inadequacy or, fear, that kind of thing. And I had her do this why exercise. And she got down to something really deep about not feeling like her parents were proud of her, and one of her parents had passed away. And so some of that grief of just, she hadn't dealt with the fact that he would never be able to say it. So that's an example, you guys, of why the mindset stuff is so important, because, how many of us think that those things are going to impact you in your career? You just don't think about it until you do this work, and it will never be done. But when you start doing some of these things, and as a student, where you're really understanding, you're like predicting your fears and you're figuring out how to work through them now, again, you're just saving yourself so much time, not just in practice, you guys, but in life. Like, this is what's important for your relationships. This is what's important for your future family, for your balance, making sure that you are always putting yourself first and your family needs first, because I will always, until I'm blue in the face, tell you that, if you get to a point where you have this massively successful practice, but you wake up one day and you're super unhappy and your kids hate you, then that would not be ideal for anyone, right? So the 7 layers of why is awesome, but figure out what you're afraid of and where that comes from.
Yeah, I like that. Diving deep into yourself psychologically. And I think that is an uncomfortable place for a lot of people to be anyways, right? It's like they can say that all they want. They'll be like, oh yeah, I'll meditate, or I'll think about it. And then they never do it. And it gets uncomfortable just thinking about getting uncomfortable, Yeah. And that's really cool. I like the 7 layers thing. I'm going to have to try that. I've never heard of it. I'm going to have to try it. And that's why I love doing these podcasts. I learn something new every single time. And if I don't, then I wasn't paying attention, and I need to go back and watch it again and again and again, because you guys always bring content, always bring value to this. And the 7 layers of why, or the 7 layers, of why. Ask yourself why after every single time you think of something that gets you uncomfortable. Why does it get you uncomfortable, or why does it make you uncomfortable? And keep going down that path. I absolutely love that, Dr. Krysti. So with that, let's hop right into our next topic of leadership and getting there and surrounding yourself with the business knowledge and investing in improving your leadership expertise. Because I think that as chiropractors, we need to have, and we talked about authority a little bit at the beginning, but we need to have that leadership role, but some of us aren't able to tap into it or don't know how, right?
Right. So I really wanted to put everything in this order for all of you as students, because the things that we talked about so far are the most important for you right now. So I would really encourage you to get to a place where you feel like you have some level of mastery with the communication, with the mindset pieces, and you have a great, mentor on board or a tribe on board for at least a year to 2 years before you really jump into this next realm. This is another really common mistake that I see a lot of students making, is they consistently are putting the cart before the horse. And I think it's a little bit of a generational thing. And here's the thing, like I'm actually a millennial. So I'm not going to be the one to sit here and say like, oh, so I had to learn this the hard way.
So it's a millennial's fault.
Right? And it's like, I had to learn this the hard way because I'm the same. I always like, how can I, on to the next thing. And because I did that, I just glossed over those things that I was just saying. And I didn't become a master at communication. And I certainly didn't have my mindset under control. So especially like when Johnny was mentioning, when people think about getting uncomfortable, they just shut down and they don't do it. That means that you need to do it most. Just make sure before I launch into my business and the team stuff and the leadership stuff, don't be afraid to spend a couple years in the thick of that communication and in the thick of the mindset piece, because if you don't lay that foundation, I don't care if you go take, Tony Robbins' Business Mastery and every other amazing business course known to man, your business might grow, but then it will consistently crash and you'll have this crazy like roller coaster ride because you didn't do the work that was required in the beginning to set yourself up for success. So please don't jump to this step until you really feel confident that like you could be placed into any scenario to talk about chiropractic and you would be very comfortable, well-versed, and you'd be able to communicate effectively. And you could face potentially any challenge in practice without it letting you tailspin for like a month at a time because your mindset wasn't where it needed to be. So with that being my caveat, I will honestly say like the business and team and like the psychoanalysis stuff that we're talking about, like this is this is what I love. I literally love it just as much as chiropractic. And I'm not ashamed to say that because I get so jazzed about new business strategy and continuing to just push my business and practice outside of its comfort zone. Because here's another thing, your business is a living, breathing thing, and it's always going to follow behind what you are doing. And so if you're not consistently pushing yourself to grow, the business easily gets into this stagnant place where, it's not even things that you would try from a new perspective for marketing or whatnot, they're not going to work effectively, even though they potentially could, mainly because you're not pushing it enough. So you have to invest in business resources. And I highly suggest that you do that outside of chiropractic when you're ready. I can honestly tell you that I have learned more about business from people not in chiropractic than any other avenue. And that's not saying I haven't learned a crazy, tremendous amount from people inside of chiropractic, but you have to put yourself in scenarios where you can take a concept that is working really well in another industry or on another avenue, and you can plug and play that into your practice, because that's how you become a leader in your area. That's how you become really confident in what you're capable of doing with your business. That's how you grow and scale your team, because you will be able to start to see trends and things that haven't yet been applied to chiropractic. And you'll be able to do that really authentically in your area because you have invested in these resources. So that, for all of you, it's easier than ever before, because that might literally just look like you're carving time out every single week to listen to business-based podcasts. You are making sure that you're going to one or two just entrepreneur-based events every year, because just immersing yourself as well with other entrepreneurs that have nothing to do with chiropractic, you guys would be just floored at the connections and the thought process that you can start to achieve. I've gone to too many just in the last couple months, and just some of the connections and the flipping things on its head are so needed, especially as your practice scales, because you all will see as your practice grows, as the rock becomes larger, it becomes harder and harder to push that rock up the hill. And so you have to start getting creative about other resources. And the same thing goes for leadership and team things. I will be super vulnerable and honest and tell you that I was a terrible leader for a long time, mainly just because I'm a big driver, and I'm a very I'm a responsibility person. So it's this is the right way to do it. And so I was very inflexible and, just not I'm sure I wasn't a fun person to be around as a boss. And so I had to invest in tons of resources to start figuring out what was important to my team and why, and how I could deliver still myself, but in a way that was more fair and adaptable for them. And, it's always been my goal to empower everyone around me, right? Especially my team members. And so it took a lot of time to really figure out what that looked like, where I could still have my high standards, but we wanted to live there because we did that together. And it was something that I inspired them to live here, instead of, being a dictator and saying this is it. So, these are all things that you all will experience as you get into practice. And they're things that honestly aren't always a ton on your mind right now, because you're worried about your radiology grade or whatever it may be. Right. And I totally get that. But these are the things that if you start figuring out what you can invest in the future, you'll be able to navigate a lot of those things, challenges and obstacles that come your way with so much higher level of ease. So, yeah.
Absolutely, Doc. You're on fire for chiropractic. You're on fire for business. You're on fire for lifestyle. I love it all. I wrote down a bunch of notes when you were talking, and I kind of want to recap for people, because what you just said is very important for chiropractic students, especially, as well as docs who are possibly early out, or even docs. I always say this, docs 40 years out that are watching this, or 20 years out that are watching this, that you got to be able to take something away. If you're not constantly learning from other doctors in the field, which is why I love bringing people on like you, and just have a variety and a plethora of information and content and value. If you're not constantly learning about this stuff, you're behind. Let's put it that way. But some notes that I took back were you got to get outside the chiropractic bubble. And the chiropractors are really good at being inside their, our little profession and everything like that. But when you start tapping into other resources like the entrepreneurship and like the business strategies that other organizations and corporations are using, and you take that and bring it back into your practice and other people's practices, that's what makes you and sets you and your coaching and your mindset coaching, whatever it might be, apart from the rest, and your practice. I mean, when you talk about like every chiropractor I know always compares like, I want my practice to be run like the Ritz-Carlton and all this, all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, but is that old school now, right? Is that like outdated? There are new and fresh things out there that we don't even know about yet that business and corporations are already doing. And we will eventually catch up, but we're working on it. And it sounds like you're out there, which is amazing, Dr. Krysti. So that's one thing. Get outside the chiropractic bubble. Another thing is, first, I think you got to look internally. Would you agree with that? Like if something's going, wonky in your office, or if something's not right in your life or something like that, don't start blaming other people. Look at yourself. Look at improving. Don't get down on yourself, but look at like, okay, here's my struggle. How do I go fix it? Right. And then you brought up the business strategy courses, and you love to get into that stuff, and find your niche or your niche. Like find what works for you and what you're passionate about, because that's what's going to reinstill that flame and relight that flame. And the last thing I wrote down was all of this that we've talked about: the mentorship, the leadership, the communication, all of it that we talked about so far. You mentioned multiple times that it's your foundation. Mm-hmm. It's what you go back on, right? It's like when crap hits the fan, it's like everything in the world is just, coming down on you. You go back to this stuff. And that's because you're like, I got the communication. I get chiropractic. I get business, or how I relate it to my practice. Go back to the basics, right? When everything hits the fan, go back to the basics. Right. Do you want to close with anything? I would love for you to give some action steps. How do people reach out to you? I just wanted to recap quick because we went over a lot.
Yeah, we did. No, thanks for the recap. I think that's perfect. I love the, look within, and yeah, I couldn't agree more on the foundation piece. So as you were kind of recapping, I was thinking there's probably some of you that are watching that are a little overwhelmed by how many things I just said that you need to do. But I just want to reiterate that this is all about habits and consistency. So as Johnny was saying, we would always talk a lot, about blocking and tackling. Like just go back to the things that are going to consistently get you results, and you don't have to continuously pour a ton of things on top of that. Just like I said, just make sure that you're always looking at that foundation and re-examining if there's any cracks that have developed there, because that's where things are going to really start to create challenges that are going to grow. So that's the biggest thing, is just, always go back to that as the start. But as you can hear, these are the things that I'm really passionate about. I know I talk super fast because I just get excited and I'm going. But I will say one of my biggest passions in the profession is, helping and mentoring young female professionals. So if you are a young female doc and you are looking for someone to just, be an ear or someone to help you, you're, more than, and obviously if you're a male too, you're welcome to reach out to me. But I'll just tell you that females are a little bit of my passion, because it's honestly, we just have a little different lens on things. And I think, having someone who has walked the path that you would like to walk down is always a fantastic asset to your toolbox, so to speak. So you can find me on Facebook, and I do have an Instagram page as well, at Dr. Krysti. I have a fantastic program called the Illuminated Squad, where I am coaching female docs, and we have both kind of a community feel, and I do one-on-one coaching with them. So you can always check out theilluminatedSquad.com if you are getting close to getting out into practice as well. But don't ever hesitate to reach out, because I can tell you from personal experience, when you find the right mentor, they'll always have time. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important for you to hear. When you find the right mentor, they will always have time, or they will be respectful enough to say like, hey, totally in the thick of it right now, got this, but I'll, get back to you next week or whatnot. So just know, like, when you find the person that you're meant to be connected to and you're meant to get some help from, you're going to know, you're going to feel it right off the bat. And so keep searching until you find that person, because, there's lots of chiropractors out there just like me who, this is one of the biggest reasons why I was put on this planet, is to help students and other young docs just get to a point where they would like to be. And also I love helping docs that have been out 10 years, 15 years and want to just look back at that foundation, because I had been out 5-6 years when I did that for myself. And I think there's such fantastic value in finding someone that loves helping you with that too. So.
Absolutely love it, Doc. So illuminatedsquad.com, illuminated as in you're turning on a light bulb. I would put it down below, but we have a banner going right now that I can't hide. So just another reason why I'm transitioning from this, because it just never works for me. I don't know why, but anyways, we'll have a banner that just says live now with Dr. Krysti Wick at the bottom the whole time. But illuminatedsquad.com, or find her on Facebook, Krysti Wick. Is it Dr. Krysti Wick on Facebook or just Krysti?
Yep, there's both. So my personal profile, and then I have a professional one too. Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, find her, Dr. Krysti Wick on Facebook. Message her, email her, whatever you got to do to get in touch with her. She's an amazing asset and person to have in your back pocket and always keep on the front of your mind when it comes to business strategizing, one-on-one coaching. And if you're a female chiropractor, you couldn't ask for a better coach or a better mentor. So if you're watching this and you resonated with what she was saying, you resonated with her and her vibe, please reach out to her. Other than that, Doc, I would love to put in a shameless plug here. So with that being said, chiropractors out there, if you are looking for an associate, an independent contractor, or looking to sell your chiropractic practice, whatever chiropractic job advert you have, I would love to host on our site. Go to postachiropracticjob.com now to post your chiropractic job advert with us, and we will throw it up on the Legendary Chiropractor, and we will share it on Facebook. You'll get to do Facebook Lives with me, and we get to chat about your gig and how it's different and how it is set apart from the rest in the profession. I love and appreciate every single one of you. Thank you for tuning into the Chiropractic Compass podcast and Facebook Lives. Dr. Krysti, thank you for being on this show. I'm so glad we finally connected. Thanks for giving up 30 to 40 minutes of your time today. And I told you these things go quick when you're going, you get passionate. It's awesome stuff. So thank you for being on today, and have a wonderful, wonderful afternoon.
My pleasure. Bye.
Bye.